Welcome back to Gospel at a Glance. I'm Andy, and I'm so glad you're here. Today we're continuing in Matthew 12, and today's passage follows directly from the Sabbath controversy that we talked about, or that we began talking about in the last episode. In Matthew 12, 1 through 8, Jesus challenged how the Sabbath was being interpreted. He showed that God's law was given to protect life, not suppress it, and he claimed authority as Lord of the Sabbath. So now Matthew shows us what happens when that interpretation is put into action. This passage that's coming up today is not just about healing on the Sabbath. It's about what happens when mercy threatens authority that's built on control. So let's hear the scripture. This is Matthew 12, 9 through 14. And we're in the NIV translation today. Going on from that place, he went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they asked him, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" He said to them, "If any of you has a sheep, and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." So he stretched it out, and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. All right, that's our scripture for today. So let's talk about why this scene matters. Matthew is intentional about placing this story immediately after the incident in the grainfield from the previous episode. The question of Sabbath interpretation is no longer theoretical. Jesus, in choosing to heal the man with the shriveled hand, has now put a human face on this issue. This man is visible. He is vulnerable. And he's being used as a test case. Matthew tells us plainly that the Pharisees are watching Jesus closely, not to learn, but in order to accuse him. The Pharisees ask, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" But this is not a sincere request for guidance. It's a trap. Matthew tells us their motive. They are looking for a reason to bring charges. In many Jewish traditions, healing was allowed on the Sabbath if a life was in danger, but healing a chronic condition could be classified as work that could wait. So the question is really this: will Jesus prioritize compassion, or will he submit to their boundaries? The boundaries that the Pharisees and scribes have put into place. Jesus answers with a common sense example. If a sheep falls into a pit on the Sabbath, you pull it out. No debate, no hesitation. And then he draws the conclusion, how much more valuable is a person than a sheep? And this logic is not way out there. It's moral clarity. Jesus is showing that their own practices already recognize exceptions when mercy is at stake. What the scribes and Pharisees lack is consistency. If mercy is permitted for animals, how can it be denied to people? Jesus then states this principle plainly. It is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. This is a direct challenge to interpretations of the law that reduce obedience to restriction. Jesus is not abolishing the Sabbath. He is not changing the Sabbath, but he is revealing its purpose. The Sabbath exists to reflect God's character, and God's character is always oriented toward life and restoration. We have a word study on restoration and wholeness if you want to go back a few episodes. So let's talk about the healing itself. Jesus doesn't touch the man. He doesn't perform any kind of elaborate act. He simply says, "Stretch your hand out," and the man responds, and his hand is restored. This detail matters because Jesus heals in a way that removes even the appearance of prohibited labor. He heals in a way that it's not work. The Pharisees' offense is not the method. They are offended by mercy. They are offended by the mercy that Jesus is showing. So mercy really becomes a threat. Matthew ends the scene with a really chilling line. The Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. This is the first explicit mention of a plan to destroy him. And notice the irony. They accuse Jesus of breaking the Sabbath. Then they conspire to kill him. The issue was never the law. It was authority. Mercy, when exercised outside of these approved boundaries that the scribes and Pharisees have set up, threatens their control. And when those control boundaries are threatened, they respond with force. So what are our takeaways for today? Mercy exposes the true purpose of God's law, and rules can be used to delay compassion, or avoid mercy in this case. Jesus prioritizes restoration over restriction, and authority is revealed by how power is used. Doing good can provoke anger when it challenges control. So Matthew 12 shows us how conflict escalates. First, Jesus challenges interpretation. Then he embodies mercy. And finally, opposition hardens into intent. And this passage really leaves us with a hard question. When compassion disrupts our rules, do we reconsider the rules, or do we silence the compassion and the mercy? Jesus always chooses restoration. Jesus always chooses mercy. And Matthew makes clear that this choice sets course for everything that will follow. It's a powerful message today. If you've enjoyed this podcast or gotten something out of it, please share it with a friend. And until next time, take care.